My friend's dad took me in after a breakup, but what happened next shocked me. If you'd told me a year ago that I'd end up living with my best friend's dad, I would have laughed in your face. But life has a messed up sense of humor. One moment, I was planning my future with the guy the first thought I'd spend my life with. The next, I was standing in the rain with a trash bag full of my clothes. No job, no apartment, and nowhere to go. His name was Elijah, my best friend Owen's dad, a man I barely knew, beyond polite hellos and awkward small talk at high school graduation. Owen had moved across the country for work, but when he heard about my breakup, he insisted I reach out to his dad until I got back on my feet. He's chill, I promise. Spare room, no questions asked. Just until you figure things out, Owen had said. I didn't want to. God, I really didn't. The idea of moving in with a man twice my age, especially someone who had watched me grow up, felt humiliating. But I was out of options. Elijah opened the door in sweatpants and a hoodie, holding a mug that read, "Number 1 Dad," with faded print. His dark hair had streaks of gray now, but it made him look more distinguished, not older. He had that weathered ex-military calmness about him, strong, quiet, steady. He gave me a quick once-over, then stepped aside like he'd been expecting me for months. "You look like shit," he said, not unkindly. I gave a weak smile. "Feel worse." "Come in. Room's upstairs. Towels are in the hallway closet. We'll talk later." That was it. No awkward questions, no pity. Just space and quiet, exactly what I needed. The house was cozy, warm lighting, leather furniture, a faint scent of cedar and laundry. Lived in, but clean. The guest room had fresh sheets, a stack of folded clothes that somehow fit me perfectly, and a note in Elijah's handwriting that read, "Didn't know what you had. Keep them if they work." The first week passed in a blur of silence and showers. Elijah gave me space. He cooked, left food on the stove with a sticky note that just said, "Eat," and quietly refilled the coffee pot before I woke up. No pressure, no expectations. But I noticed things. The way he moved through the kitchen barefoot in the mornings, humming to himself. The way he stretched before bed, shirt riding up just enough to make me glance away too fast. The way he spoke, calm, deliberate, like every word was weighed before he let it go. It wasn't until the second week that we actually talked, really talked. He found me on the porch one night, barefoot, wrapped in one of his hoodies I'd borrowed without asking. I hadn't even realized he was home until I heard the screen door creak behind me. "Elijah," I said, startled. "Didn't mean to sneak up. Just figured you'd rather not be alone out here." I nodded. "Just thinking." He lit a cigarette and held it out to me. I shook my head. He took a slow drag, exhaled through his nose. "You want to talk about it?" I hesitated. "Not really." "That's fair." He took another drag. "But sitting out here in the cold, staring at nothing, isn't gonna fix it either." I don't know why, but something in me cracked. Maybe it was the quiet way he said it. Maybe it was the way he didn't look at me like I was broken. He just waited, not pressing, just present. "He cheated," I said finally. 6 months, with someone I thought was our friend. Elijah didn't flinch, just nodded once. "That'll fuck you up." "Yeah." We sat in silence for a while. Then he offered me the cigarette again. This time, I took it. He leaned against the railing, arms folded, eyes on the horizon. "I've been there," he said. "Different story, same kind of pain. Betrayal like that. It makes you question everything. Yourself, your judgment, your worth." I looked over at him. "How'd you get past it?" He looked at me then. Really looked at me. "You don't. Not all at once. You survive it first. Then one day, you realize it's not the first thing you think about when you wake up." The way he said it made my throat tighten. I looked away. "Thanks," I whispered. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. The days after that porch conversation started to feel different. Elijah didn't change. He was still calm, still quiet, still brewing coffee before I got up. But I found myself noticing more. The subtle curve of his biceps when he reached for a pan. the way his voice dropped slightly when he was half asleep and asked if I wanted eggs. The fact that he never pushed, but somehow always knew exactly when to say something, or when to say nothing at all. I started to linger in the kitchen longer, waited until he came home to eat dinner instead of heating something up on my own. He noticed. I could see it in the way his eyes tracked me, careful and curious. He never said anything, but sometimes his glances held a little too long. Sometimes I caught him staring when he thought I wasn't looking. We both pretended not to notice, until we couldn't anymore. It was a Friday night, 2.5 weeks after I moved in. I had gotten out of the shower, hair still damp, wearing one of his old hoodies and sweatpants that clung to me in all the wrong or right ways. Elijah was in the living room watching some old detective show, sipping whiskey. I sat down at the far end of the couch. We didn't speak at first. Just the quiet murmur of the TV filling the space between us. Then he said, "You know you don't have to keep wearing my clothes." I looked over at him. "You want them back?" He smirked, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I didn't say that." A beat of silence. Then another. "It's just... they smell like you," I said, voice quieter than I meant it to be. His head turned, slowly. "That a good thing or a bad thing?" "I haven't decided yet." He let out a soft breath. "You're playing with fire, you know that?" "I think I've been cold long enough." The words left my mouth before I could second guess them. Elijah didn't say anything, just stared at me the way he had that first night. Unflinching, steady, like he was peeling back a layer at a time. Then, he set his glass down carefully on the coffee table. "You sure?" he asked. I didn't answer. I just moved closer. There wasn't some dramatic kiss. No music swell. It wasn't sudden. It was inevitable. Like gravity. Like the slow pull between two people who've been pretending too long. He reached out first. His hand brushed my jaw, rough but gentle. I leaned in. Our lips met in the quietest, softest way possible. No rush, no heat, just a slow testing press. It felt like breathing after being underwater. When we pulled back, neither of us spoke. He looked at me, almost like he was afraid I'd regret it. "I'm not sorry," I whispered. He shook his head. "Neither am I." That night, I didn't sleep in the guest room. We didn't do much. Just lay in his bed, facing each other in the dark. His arm around my waist, my head on his chest, his fingers drawing lazy circles on my back. I had never felt more still in my entire life. I knew the world would catch up with us eventually, that there'd be questions, that Owen would find out. But in that moment, none of it mattered. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I woke up to the sound of a lawnmower somewhere down the street and the feeling of warmth. Elijah's arms slung over my waist, his breath steady against the back of my neck. It took a second to remember where I was. Then it all came back. The night before. The quiet tension between us breaking. The way he had held me like he didn't want to let go, even long after the kiss faded into silence. It had felt good. Easy, even. But now, in the clear light of morning, reality started creeping in. Elijah stirred behind me. "You awake?" he mumbled, voice thick with sleep. "Yeah." A pause. "You okay?" I nodded, but then remembered he couldn't see that. "Yeah. Just processing, I guess." His hand squeezed my side gently. "Me too." We stayed like that for a bit longer before getting up. The air between us wasn't awkward. It was just quieter. More loaded. We didn't talk about what had happened. Not really. But something between us had shifted, and neither of us was pretending otherwise anymore. I padded into the kitchen to make coffee. Elijah followed a minute later, still shirtless, scratching his chest like it was just another morning. except it wasn't. Figured I'd mow the lawn later, he said casually, grabbing a banana from the fruit bowl. Cool, I replied, pouring 2 mugs and sliding one toward him. Our hands touched for half a second. We both froze. I don't know what this is yet, I said finally. Elijah looked at me. Me either, but it wasn't nothing. No, he said, shaking his head. Definitely not nothing. That afternoon, I stayed in my room. Not because I was avoiding him, but because I needed to think about what this was, what it could be. Elijah was older. 20 years, maybe more. He was also Owen's dad. That part alone made everything more complicated. Owen. I hadn't told him anything. Obviously. And now, it wasn't just about living in his dad's house. It was about whatever this was turning into. Was it a fling? A rebound? A mistake? But the way Elijah touched me, looked at me, held me, it didn't feel like a mistake. Later that night, he knocked on my door. Want to watch a movie? I hesitated only for a second. Yeah, sure. He didn't pick a romantic comedy or something obviously loaded. It was an old spy thriller, all muted colors and slow dialogue. But we ended up closer on the couch than the night before, our shoulders brushing, his hand finding mine under the blanket. Halfway through the movie, I turned to him. Is this weird for you? He didn't answer right away. Yeah, a little, I laughed softly. At least you're honest. But weird doesn't mean wrong, he added. It just means new. I turned that over in my head. New. Not wrong, not bad, just different. He looked over at me, eyes soft. You're not a kid anymore, you know. I noticed that the day you walked in with your stuff in that trash bag. You didn't ask for anything, didn't whine, didn't fall apart. You just handled it. That kind of strength. It's rare. I felt my face heat up. No one had ever talked about me like that. Not even my ex. Elijah. He leaned in again. This time the kiss was deeper, less tentative. It lingered. When we pulled apart, the movie was forgotten. Everything else faded. This was happening, whatever this was. That night, I ended up in his bed again. We kissed until we were both breathless, until my lips were swollen and my heart was thudding so loud I thought it might wake the whole neighborhood. We held each other like we didn't know when the next moment like this would come. But it did, again and again. The next morning, we had coffee together like we were trying on the rhythm of something real. And it fit, maybe too well. The day settled into something that looked a lot like a relationship, even though neither of us said the word. I'd cook breakfast sometimes, Elijah would make dinner. We'd clean the house side by side. I helped him in the garage one afternoon when he was fixing the hinges on the back gate. He looked up at me with grease on his cheek and said, "You know, I haven't felt like this in a long time." Like what? Like someone sees me and doesn't want to run. That stayed with me. And still, we didn't tell Owen. It wasn't that we were hiding it, exactly. We just hadn't said anything. And honestly, I didn't know how. How do you explain to your best friend that while he was living his life across the country, you moved into his dad's house and started falling for him? It felt like a slow build toward a confrontation I couldn't stop. Then one afternoon, it happened. I was folding laundry in the living room when Elijah called out from the kitchen. Hey, Owen's calling. My heart jumped into my throat. I walked into the kitchen. Elijah held up the phone. Want to say hi? I hesitated. Sure. He put it on speaker and leaned against the counter. Yo, Owen's voice came through. What's up, old man? You surviving with the 20-something crashing in your house? Elijah grinned at me. Barely, Owen laughed. Be nice to him. He's fragile. I rolled my eyes. Still here, dude. Oh shit, hey, didn't realize you were both on. How's it going? It's good, I said slowly. There was a pause on the other end. Then, wait, are you two? Are you getting along? For real? Yeah, Elijah said, tone casual. He's easy to live with. Another pause. I'm happy to hear that, Owen said. I just didn't want it to be weird, you know. It's not weird, Elijah said, glancing at me. Not yet, I thought. After we hung up, Elijah looked at me across the counter. We're gonna have to tell him at some point. I nodded. I know, just not yet. He walked over, wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. You tell me when you're ready. We'll do it together. And that was it. He didn't push. But things got real after that. The feelings stopped being something I could box up neatly. It wasn't just comfort or distraction anymore. It was late night confessions and lazy Sunday mornings in his bed. It was him brushing a thumb over my lower lip absent-mindedly while we talked. It was the way he said my name, like it meant something. And one night, I finally let myself want more. We were lying in bed, both shirtless, his hand resting lightly on my hip, his thumb tracing lazy circles on my skin. I turned over, pressed my forehead to his chest. Elijah, he kissed the top of my head. Yeah? I want to be with you. He froze for a second, his hand stilled. Are you sure? I looked up at him. Yeah, I am. Elijah looked at me for a long time. His eyes were searching mine as if waiting for any flicker of doubt. But there wasn't any. I was sure. He nodded once, slow and deliberate, then leaned in, kissed me with a quiet intensity that made my whole body tense. Not rushed, not desperate, just full, like he wanted me to feel it in every nerve ending. I need you to tell me if you're not okay, he said, voice low. At any point. I will, I whispered. We didn't rush anything. He took his time, touching me like I was something fragile and precious at the same time. It wasn't rough. It wasn't pornographic. It was personal. Two people who had been circling something for weeks finally stepping into it fully. And when it was over, we didn't say anything. Just lay there, tangled up, breathing in sync. The next morning felt different. Not awkward, just heavier. Like the air between us had taken on weight. I caught myself looking at him differently, and I knew he felt it too. We moved through the day in a kind of soft haze, making breakfast together, running errands. Like we were learning how to function with this new thread between us. But the real test came sooner than I thought. That evening, I was in the living room scrolling through job listings when Elijah walked in with 2 beers and a strange look on his face. What's up? I asked. He handed me a beer and sat down. Owen's coming to visit. I froze. What? Next weekend? Said he's got a few days off. Wants to check in, see how we're doing. Oh. I took a slow sip of the beer, but it did nothing to settle my stomach. Elijah watched me carefully. We don't have to say anything. Not yet, but if you want to... I don't know. He nodded. Okay. The days leading up to Owen's visit felt like standing on a cliff edge, knowing the wind could push you either way. Elijah and I didn't change anything, not really. But I was more aware of everything. The way we sat on the couch, how long our eye contact lasted, how I accidentally grabbed his hand one morning while handing him the remote. Then Owen showed up. He walked in with that same chaotic energy he'd always had. Backpack slung over one shoulder, sneakers barely tied, smile too big for his face. My dudes, he said, dropping his stuff in the hallway. What's good? I forced a grin. Hey, man. He hugged me, then elbowed Elijah. Dad, you still breathing? Barely, Elijah said with a smirk. Thanks to your friend here. We all laughed, but my throat felt tight. Owen didn't notice anything, at first. We spent the evening catching up, ordering pizza, playing some old co-op game we used to love. It felt almost normal, like none of it had changed. But that night, when Elijah went upstairs to shower, Owen looked at me across the kitchen counter. So, you and my dad seem pretty close now, I blinked. Yeah, I guess. He raised an eyebrow. You guess? I shrugged. We've been living together for a month. That happens. He nodded slowly, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. Then he said something that made my chest tighten. You ever think about how weird that would be? Like, if you two got close? I tried to play it off. What do you mean? Nothing. I don't know. Just saying. Wouldn't be a big deal or anything. I'd just never unsee it, you know? I laughed, but it sounded thin. Yeah, that'd be awkward as hell. He smiled and dropped it, but my hands were cold. Later that night, Elijah slipped into my room after Owen had gone to bed. Did he say anything? I nodded. He joked, kind of. Said he'd never unsee it if we were together. Elijah sighed and sat on the edge of the bed. Do you want to tell him or wait? I sat up, heart racing. I think I want to. I just don't know how. He reached for my hand. Then, let's figure it out together. We didn't sleep much that night, not because anything physical happened. We just lay there in the dark, quiet, thinking. Every so often, Elijah would squeeze my hand. I think he could feel how tense I was, like my thoughts were spinning too fast to land. The next morning, Owen was in the kitchen, pouring cereal straight into his mouth like a human dumpster. So what's on the agenda today? He asked, milk carton in the other hand. Elijah chuckled, unfazed. I've got work stuff to handle for a few hours. Maybe take the truck in. You two figure out lunch or something. Owen nodded and turned to me. You want to walk into town later? Hit up that sandwich place? I opened my mouth, then paused. Elijah looked over his coffee cup at me. He didn't say anything, but I could feel the silent encouragement in his eyes. Actually, I said, clearing my throat, can we talk first? Just us three, before we go anywhere. Owen frowned. Okay. Elijah stood up, nodded toward the living room. Let's sit. The three of us sat down, me on the armchair, Elijah on the far end of the couch, and Owen dead center, looking back and forth like he was bracing for bad news. This feels weird, he said slowly. Did someone die? No, Elijah said, then looked at me. But this is important. I took a breath. Owen, your dad and I, we've gotten close. Owen stared at me, chewing slowly. Yeah, you said that. I mean, really close. It took him a second. His chewing slowed, then stopped. His eyebrows lifted. Oh, he blinked. Oh shit. There was a long silence. Then Owen leaned back, cereal bowl still in his lap, and stared at the ceiling. I swear to God, if you tell me you've been sleeping in his bed, I'm walking into the ocean. Nobody laughed. Elijah cleared his throat. It's not just that. We care about each other. This isn't a fling. Owen looked at me, and for the first time in years, he didn't look like my goofy best friend. He looked confused, cautious. Since when? I answered honestly. It kind of happened, slowly, but it's real. He nodded, slow and mechanical. Okay, he said finally. Okay, I asked. I mean, it's weird, not gonna lie, but you're both adults, and I care about both of you. He sighed. Guess I just need a minute to, not picture it, ever. I laughed finally. So did Elijah. But you're not mad? I asked. He shook his head. Nah, just shocked. I figured you were moping around post-breakup, not flirting with my dad. Hey, Elijah said, feigning offense. I did some flirting too, Owen groaned. Okay, never mind. I'm deleting this memory in real time. But he smiled, and that's when I knew we were okay. The mood lightened after that. Owen didn't bring it up again. Not directly, but his whole vibe shifted. He stayed the rest of the weekend, joking like normal, asking for extra bacon at breakfast, making fun of my messy hair in the mornings. But every so often, I'd catch him watching me and Elijah from the corner of his eye. Not suspiciously, just processing, adjusting. Before he left, we stood on the porch together, the car already packed. You good? I asked him. He looked at me. Yeah, It's still a little weird, but honestly, I've seen you after your last relationship. You were miserable. I was. He nodded. You're different now. Better. Then he pointed a finger at me. Just don't be weird about it, okay? Like, no couple selfies in front of my high school diploma or whatever. I grinned. Deal. Elijah came outside then, tossing Owen his keys. Drive safe, text when you get in. Owen gave him a half hug. Don't corrupt my best friend too much. No promises. Once Owen drove off, Elijah and I just stood there for a moment, watching the dust settle on the gravel driveway. The air was warm, soft, like the end of a long day. He took it better than I thought, I said. Elijah nodded. Told you we'd figure it out. I looked up at him, that calm, quiet presence I'd come to rely on. His arm slipped around my waist, easy and familiar. So what now? I asked. We live, he said. We see where it goes. And we did. It wasn't always smooth. There were awkward moments. People stared sometimes. I had to get used to the occasional awkward question when people realized who he was. But I didn't care. I'd been through worse. I'd come out of it stronger. And now I had something real. Someone steady. Months passed. I got a job doing freelance design work full-time. Elijah taught me how to fix a lawnmower. I taught him how to use Google Docs. We fought over the thermostat, laughed until we cried, danced in the kitchen at midnight when neither of us could sleep. He made me feel safe. Not just safe, but seen. Like I didn't have to be anything other than who I was. Sometimes, I'd wake up before him and just watch him sleep, his breathing slow, his hand resting on my chest, and I'd think about how far I'd come from that night in the rain with a trash bag and no plan, to here, with him. And I knew, somehow, this was exactly where I was meant to end up.